Tonight, you're going to conquer most of Europe. You'll crown yourself emperor in front of the Pope. And then, one woman is going to destroy you. The candles are burning low in the Tuileries Palace throne room. It's December 15th, 1809, and you are standing before a gathering of the most powerful people in France. But you can barely see them. Your eyes are fixed on her, Josephine. She's wearing a plain white dress, not the jewel-encrusted gowns of state you're used to seeing her in. No diamonds tonight, no crown. Just white fabric against skin that has somehow never lost the warmth of the Caribbean, even after all these years in Paris. She's crying. Not the delicate, performative tears of a courtier, but real, ugly, gasping sobs that echo off the marble walls and make everyone in the room shift uncomfortably. The greatest empire in Europe, and this is the sound that fills it. You read your statement. Your voice is steady. Far from ever finding cause for complaint, I can, to the contrary, only congratulate myself on the devotion and tenderness of my beloved wife. She has adorned 13 years of my life. The memory will always remain engraved in my heart. Now it's her turn. She picks up the paper. Her hands are shaking. She reads the first few lines. And then she can't continue. The words just stop. She looks at you across the room with those dark eyes that once made you write love letters that would embarrass a teenager, and she collapses. You catch her. Of course you catch her. You carry her to her chambers yourself, past the silent courtiers, past the guards, past the portrait of yourself that hangs in the hallway, looking far more composed than you feel right now. This is the woman who betrayed you. The woman who broke your heart so completely that the pieces never quite fit back together. The woman you forgave. The woman you crowned empress with your own hands. And tonight you are setting her aside because she cannot give you the one thing your empire demands: an heir. You lay her on the bed. She's still sobbing. And somewhere inside the man who conquered Italy, Egypt, and Austria, somewhere inside the emperor who crowned himself because no one else was worthy of doing it, a voice whispers something you'll never say out loud. This is the worst thing you've ever done. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Your story starts long before this moment, on a small island in the Mediterranean, born in a poor family that spoke the wrong language. Welcome, nightlings. This is Huxley. If you like listening or falling asleep to real stories that carry you through history into the minds of those who shaped the world before us, then this is the place for you. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, if you could live one historical figure's life from beginning to end, who would you choose? For me, I think I'd choose Marco Polo. Not for the fame or the adventure, but because he spent 20 years in a world so different from his own that when he came home, nobody believed him. There's something deeply human about that. About seeing things nobody else has seen and struggling to explain it to them. Drop your answer in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. If these stories speak to you, if you find comfort in the lessons found in the quiet corners of history, tap the follow button to join our circle of dreamers and let the next story find you when you least expect it. You are born on August 15th, 1769, in Ajaccio, Corsica. And your timing? Well, your timing is impeccable. France conquered your island exactly 15 months ago. So you are technically French, in the same way that a cat adopted by dogs is technically part of the pack. You belong on paper. Your name is Napoleon de Bonaparte. Not French. Italian. Corsican Italian, to be specific, which is its own particular flavor of Mediterranean stubbornness. Your father, Carlo, is a minor nobleman and lawyer who made a pragmatic choice when France took over. He switched sides, supported the new rulers, joined the establishment. It was the smart move. It was also the kind of move that earns you whispers behind your back for the rest of your life. Your mother, Maria Letizia Ramolino, is something else entirely. She's tough in the way that Corsican women are tough, which is to say she can manage a household of 11 children, a politically flexible husband, and the general chaos of post-conquest life without ever raising her voice above a certain terrifying calm. You will inherit her iron will. You will also inherit your father's ambition. Together, these two traits will either make you or destroy you. You are 9 years old. You have a funny accent, an Italian name, and absolutely no idea what's coming. January 1779. You arrive at the Royal Military School at Brienne-le-Château, in the flat, cold interior of France. It is nothing like Corsica, where you grew up. The stone dormitories are freezing. The food is institutional in the worst possible sense. The other boys are the sons of French aristocrats. Polished, entitled, and immediately, instinctively hostile to you. You barely speak French. Your accent is thick. When you try to say your name, Napoleon de Bonaparte. The boys laugh so hard that one of them falls off his bench. They call you La Paillonnaire, straw nose, a pun on Napoleone. They mock your poverty, your clothes, your island, your family, everything. And here's the thing nobody told you about being 9 years old and completely alone in a hostile country. It doesn't get better quickly. You don't find a friendly mentor in week 2 who teaches you to believe in yourself. That's not how this works. What actually happens is that you spend months in a kind of furious, humiliated silence, retreating into the one place where nobody can touch you. Books. You devour everything. History, mathematics, geography, military strategy. You read about Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar and the battles of antiquity while the other boys play their aristocratic games in the courtyard. You are lonely, sulky, and prone to violent outbursts when pushed too far, which the other boys find endlessly entertaining to provoke. But here's what they don't see. While they're laughing at your accent, you're calculating trajectories. While they're comparing family estates, you're memorizing the campaigns of Frederick the Great. While they see a funny little Corsican who doesn't belong, something is taking shape inside you that none of them can match. Mathematics becomes your language. Artillery science becomes your art. You can't charm a room, but you can calculate the exact angle at which a cannonball will breach a fortification wall. And in the world that's coming, the world of revolution and war and empires built on gunpowder, that particular skill set is about to become very, very valuable. 5 years at Brienne, 5 years of cold stone walls and aristocratic contempt, and the slow, grinding education of a boy who has no choice but to become exceptional or disappear. In 1784, you transfer to the École Militaire in Paris, the most prestigious military academy in France. You complete the 2-year course in 1 year. You graduate as a second lieutenant of artillery, ranked 42nd out of 58. Not stellar, but you're 16 years old and you're done. You're an officer. You have a commission. And then your father dies. Carlo Bonaparte. Stomach cancer. February 24th, 1785. He was 38 years old. Remember that number. It will matter later. You are now the eldest functioning male in a large, financially precarious family. The scholarship boy. The outsider. The one everyone is counting on. You are 16, penniless, and the weight of an entire family has just landed on your shoulders. Now, historians won't know this yet, but this moment, this is where it starts. Not the military genius, not the political ambition. This, the boy who lost his father, inherited his family's survival, and decided, quietly, furiously, that he would never ever be powerless again. It's 1789. You're a 20-year-old artillery lieutenant stationed in Auxonne, a garrison town so unremarkable that even its residents seem apologetic about it. You eat 1 meal a day because that's all you can afford. You spend your free time reading radical philosophy and writing essays about Corsican independence that absolutely no one asks for. And then the world breaks open. The French Revolution erupts in July 1789, and suddenly everything you've been feeling, the resentment of aristocratic privilege, the fury of being judged by birth instead of ability, the sense that the old order is rotten at its core, suddenly all of that has a name: liberty, equality, fraternity. You embrace the revolution with the fervor of someone who has been waiting for exactly this moment. Because, here's the thing, the revolution promises. Talent matters more than bloodline. Ability trumps inheritance. A Corsican artillery officer with a funny accent and no money can rise as far as his genius will carry him. But first, you go home. Between 1789 and 1793, you return to Corsica 3 times, convinced you can lead the island's political transformation. You clash bitterly with Pasquale Paoli, the independence hero your father once followed. Paoli is old guard, your new wave. And when Paoli sides with the British against France in 1793, well, that's the end of the road for the Bonapartes in Corsica. Your family is driven from the island. You arrive in mainland France as refugees, penniless, homeless. Your mother, your siblings, all of them looking at you. The officer, the one with the commission, the one who's supposed to figure this out. And this is the moment, right here, where Corsica dies inside you and France is born. You can't be Napoleon de Bonaparte anymore. That person has no country, no home, no future. You need to become someone else, someone French, someone useful, someone dangerous. December 1793. The port city of Toulon has been seized by British-backed royalists, and the Republic is desperate for someone, anyone, who knows what to do about it. You know what to do about it. You're a 24-year-old captain with an artillery plan that the senior officers think is reckless. You don't care what they think. You position your batteries at the key fort, Fort Leguillette, which controls the harbour. If you take this fort, the British fleet has to leave. If the British fleet leaves, Toulon falls. It works. You personally lead an assault on the fort. A British bayonet catches you in the thigh. Your first significant wound, and it won't be your last. But the fort falls. The British evacuate. Toulon is recaptured for the Republic. You are promoted to Brigadier General at 24. Now, here's what they don't tell you about sudden military success during a revolution. The people who promote you today can execute you tomorrow. And in July 1794, when Robespierre falls and the political winds shift violently, you're briefly thrown in prison on suspicion of Jacobin sympathies. 2 weeks. Just long enough to understand that genius means nothing without political survival skills. You're released. But for the next year, you're essentially nobody again. An unemployed general wandering Paris in a threadbare coat, eating when you can, sleeping where you can, attending every salon and dinner party that will have you, looking for a patron, a sponsor, a way back in. It comes on October the 5th, 1795, the 13th Vendémiaire. A royalist mob is threatening to overthrow the Directory government. Someone needs to disperse them. You are handed the job. You load your cannons with grape shot, small metal balls that turn a cannon into a giant shotgun. And you fire directly into the crowd on the steps of the church of Saint-Roch. It is brutal. It is effective. It is the moment that changes everything. Paul Barras, the most powerful man in the Directory, notices you. He gives you command of the Army of the Interior, and he introduces you to a woman, a widow. 6 years older than you, glamorous, connected, dangerous. She smells of musk and violet. Her name is Josephine. You meet her in the autumn of 1795, and it's embarrassing. You are 26 years old, lean and ragged, surviving on 1 meal a day, wearing a coat that has seen better decades. She is 32, luminous, the kind of woman who makes a room reorganize itself around her when she enters. She has survived a husband's execution, a stay in prison where she was days from the guillotine, and the attentions of the most powerful men in Paris. She has 2 children. She has debts. She has a pug named Fortune who sleeps on her bed and tolerates no one. She allegedly calls you Puss in Boots. You don't care. You are hit by her the way a cannonball hits a fortress wall, completely, catastrophically, without any hope of structural recovery. You write her letters. You show up at her salon uninvited. You make yourself unavoidable. She finds you amusing, then interesting, then persistent enough to consider seriously. Now, you won't know this for a while, but Paul Barras, the man who introduced you, he was Josephine's lover, and he's tired of her. She's expensive, demanding, and he has newer interests. He introduced you to her to get her off his hands. She doesn't love you. Not the way you love her. She sees a rising military star who can provide financial security and social protection. It's practical. It's strategic. It's the kind of calculation that a woman who nearly lost her head on the guillotine learns to make. But you are gone. Absolutely, deliriously, embarrassingly in love. The kind of love that makes you forget you're supposed to be a serious military commander. The kind that makes your aides roll their eyes and your family furious. The wedding is March 9th, 1796, and it is a disaster. You arrive 2 hours late because you were poring over military maps. The registrar, a man named Leclerc, arrives at 6 p.m., waits until 8 p.m., decides you're clearly not coming, and goes home to bed. His replacement, Antoine Colin-Lacombe, who has a wooden leg for no reason that's relevant to the story but feels worth mentioning, has no legal authority to marry anyone. He does it anyway. Both of you lie about your ages on the marriage certificate. She subtracts 4 years. You add 18 months, because apparently even your paperwork can't be straightforward. Your wedding gift to her, a gold medallion inscribed to destiny. Your wedding night, her pug fortune bites you on the shin when you try to get into the bed. This is not a metaphor. This is a pug defending its territory from an invading Corsican. 2 days later, you leave for Italy. You are about to command an army for the first time. You are about to become one of the most celebrated military commanders in European history. And you are about to start writing love letters that will make historians uncomfortable for the next 200 years. You arrive in Nice in late March 1796 to take command of the army of Italy. And what you find is not encouraging. 38,000 soldiers, underfed, unpaid, poorly equipped, morale somewhere between resigned and considering desertion. The officers look at you, this thin, young, intense Corsican with an accent and a reputation for shooting Parisians, and their expressions range from skeptical to openly hostile. You don't have time for their skepticism. You give a speech that will echo through military history. Soldiers, you are naked, badly fed. I will lead you into the most fertile plains in the world. Rich provinces, great cities will be in your power. It's a promise. It's a bribe. It's also, as it turns out, entirely true. What happens next is one of the most remarkable military campaigns ever conducted. In a matter of weeks, you defeat the Sardinian army, forcing them to sign an armistice. Then you turn on the Austrians. Montenotte, Lodi, Arcole, Rivoli, the names will become legends. At the Bridge of Lodi, on May the 10th, 1796, you personally lead a charge across a bridge under Austrian cannon fire. Your aides try to stop you. You don't listen. The bridge is 200 yards of open ground, and the Austrians have it covered. Men fall around you. You keep going. The bridge is taken. After Lodi, your soldiers give you a nickname, Le Petit Caporal, the Little Corporal. Not because you're short, your average height, about 5'7", and that myth will annoy you for eternity, but because you fought alongside them, like one of them. This is the moment the army of Italy becomes your army. And every night after the battles and the dispatches and the strategic planning, you write to her. I awake full of you. Your image and the intoxicating pleasures of last night do not allow my senses to rest. Sweet and incomparable Josephine, in what strange way do you work in my heart? 1,000 kisses upon thy eyes, upon thy lips, upon thy heart. Adorable woman, what is thy ascendancy? These are not the letters of a measured man. These are the letters of someone who is on fire. You conquer northern Italy by day and dissolve into a lovesick puddle by candlelight. Your aides are bewildered. Your generals are embarrassed. You don't care. And Josephine? She barely writes back. When she does, her letters are short, tepid, vaguely affectionate in the way someone might be affectionate toward a persistent puppy. You beg her to come to Italy. She declines. She has a headache. She's not feeling well. She might be pregnant. She's not. The Directory government is actually worried that you might abandon the Italian campaign if she doesn't show up. That's how obviously obsessed you are. Here's the thing no one told you. While you're writing these letters, while you're pouring your heart onto paper with the urgency of a man who has discovered that love is more terrifying than artillery fire, she is in Paris with Hippolyte Charles. He's 23, a lieutenant in a hussar regiment. Handsome, dark-complexioned, funny, relaxed, everything you are not. The Duchess of Abrantes would later describe him as someone who spoke only puns and was the buffoon. He makes Josephine laugh. He has time for her. He doesn't spend every waking moment conquering Italy. You don't know about any of this. Not yet. And the dramatic irony of that gap, the gap between what you feel and what she's actually doing, is the engine that will power the next 3 years of your emotional life. When Josephine finally travels to Italy in June 1796, she brings Hippolyte Charles in her entourage. He's listed as part of the official party. Your own wife's lover, traveling under your military protection. You don't know. Everyone else does. Egypt, 1798. You have brought an army and 167 scientists across the Mediterranean. You're going to conquer Egypt, establish French dominance in the east, and possibly cut off Britain's route to India. Oh, and discover the Rosetta Stone, just casually. The Battle of the Pyramids, July 21st, 1798. You face a Mamluk cavalry force that outnumbers you and is famous for being absolutely terrifying on horseback. You form your infantry into squares, dense formations with bayonets pointing outward in every direction. The cavalry charges crash against these squares like waves against rock. It is a massacre, but not of your men. You stand before the Great Pyramids and reportedly say, "Soldiers, from the heights of these pyramids, 40 centuries look down upon you." Whether you actually said this or embellished it later doesn't matter much. It's the kind of thing you would say. But then, the moment that changes everything. In July 1798, while you're commanding an expedition in a country that is simultaneously fascinating and miserably hot, your aide-you-know tells you the truth. About Josephine. About Hippolyte Charles. About what everyone in Paris apparently already knows. The veil is completely torn away. You write to your brother Joseph. The letter is raw with pain. I need to be alone. I am tired of human nature. I need solitude and isolation. Grandeur bores me. My feelings are dried up. Glory is stale. At 29, I have exhausted everything. You are 29 years old. You have conquered Italy. You are conquering Egypt. And you feel like you have nothing. But here's the worst part. Your letter to Joseph is intercepted by the British Royal Navy, specifically by Admiral Horatio Nelson's fleet, and they publish it. In the London Morning Chronicle, November 24th, 1798. Your private heartbreak, your most intimate anguish, printed in a newspaper for all of Europe to read and mock. The man who conquered Italy has been publicly humiliated by his own wife's affair. And there's nothing he can do about it from Egypt. Something dies in you that month. Now, you won't realize it right away. But the man who wrote those love letters, the man who was full of Josephine, the man who dissolved at the thought of her, that man is gone. In his place, something harder is forming, something colder, something that will never be that vulnerable again. You take a mistress, Pauline Forez, the 19-year-old wife of a lieutenant. She's pretty, she's willing, and she's here, which is more than you can say for your wife. The army calls her Napoleon's Cleopatra. You're not subtle about it. You send Pauline's husband on a mission to France to get him out of the way, though the British intercept his ship and send him back. When he finds out, he treats Pauline violently. She demands a divorce. You arrange it. You tell people that if Pauline bears you a son, you'll divorce Josephine. She doesn't. But the intention is clear. The balance has shifted. Permanently. Autumn 1799. You leave Egypt secretly, abandoning your army, which they won't be thrilled about, and race back to France. The Directory government is collapsing. Paris is broke, hungry, and ripe for someone to seize power. But first, Josephine. She's heard you're coming. She's panicking. She knows you know. She rushes to intercept you on the road. But you take the Bourbonnais route, and she takes the Burgundy route. You arrive in Paris. She's not there. Your family is. And they are delighted to tell you everything they've been wanting to tell you for 3 years. By the time Josephine reaches the house on Rue de la Victoire, you've had hours to stew in the combined venom of your mother and siblings. You lock the bedroom door. She knocks. You don't answer. She weeps. You hear her through the door. This woman who survived the guillotine without crying, who navigated the salons of post-revolutionary Paris with impossible grace, who kept her composure through everything. She is sobbing on the other side of your door. All night. Eugene comes. Hortense comes. Her children. The stepchildren who adore you. They plead. And something inside you, some last remnant of the man who was full of her, cracks. You open the door. You forgive her. But forgiveness isn't the same as trust. And trust, once broken this completely, doesn't regenerate. It just scars over. She will never stray again. You, on the other hand, will have affairs for the rest of your life. You will tell her about them, in detail. You will shout at her in public. You will control her social calendar, her friendships, her movements. This is what your love becomes, a cage disguised as forgiveness. Now, the coup of 18 Brumaire, November 9th to 10th, 1799. The plan is elegant. You'll convince the legislative councils that there's a Jacobin plot, move them to the Château de Saint-Cloud outside Paris, and then persuade them to hand power to a 3-person consulate with you in charge. Simple, clean, bloodless. It almost goes catastrophically wrong. On day 1, things go smoothly. You spread rumors. The councils relocate. 3 of the 5 directors resign. One of them, Barras, possibly after receiving a significant amount of money. On day 2, you blunder. You stumble through a speech before the Council of Ancients. You're sweating. You're incoherent. This is not your arena. Battlefields make sense to you. Parliamentary chambers do not. Then you enter the Council of 500, and it gets worse. The deputies see through the plot. They're screaming, "Down with the dictator! Down with the tyrant!" A motion is raised to declare you an outlaw. You are being physically jostled. You might actually be scratched. Napoleon Bonaparte, who charged across the Bridge of Lodi under Austrian cannon fire, is being overwhelmed by angry politicians. Your brother Lucien saves you. He slips out of the chamber tells the soldiers guarding the building that the deputies are being terrorized by dagger-wielding Jacobins. They're not. And in a theatrical gesture that deserves its own opera, seizes a sword and declares he'll plunge it through his own brother's heart if Napoleon proves to be a traitor. General Murat's grenadiers march into the orangerie. The deputies flee through windows, literally. Elected representatives of the French Republic, climbing through windows in their robes to escape bayonets. By midnight, it's over. You are First Consul of France, dictator, effectively. You are 30 years old. The next 5 years are a blur of reinvention. You redesign France from the ground up, because apparently conquering Italy wasn't enough of a project. The Napoleonic Code, a unified legal system replacing the patchwork of regional laws, feudal customs, and church regulations that has governed France for centuries. It establishes equality before the law, property rights, and civil liberties. It will spread across Europe and eventually underpin the legal systems of over 40 countries. It also enshrines some things you'll be less proud of later, particularly regarding the rights of women, which it curtails dramatically. Women are our property. We are not theirs, you say, and it goes into the code. This is not your finest moment. The Bank of France, the lycée system, state-run secondary schools that open education to merit, not birth. The Concordat with the Pope, re-establishing the Catholic Church in France after the Revolution's rupture. Infrastructure, roads, canals, bridges. The Louvre, transformed from a royal palace into a public museum. You work 18 hours a day. Your sleep is broken and irregular. A few hours here, a few hours there, always with candles burning in your study so that anyone passing will believe you never rest. You dictate letters and laws and military orders at a speed that leaves your secretaries gasping. You are remaking a nation in your image. And on December 2nd, 1804, you crown yourself emperor. Notre Dame Cathedral. Pope Pius VII has travelled from Rome for the ceremony. The plan is for the Pope to place the crown on your head. But when the moment arrives, you take it from his hands and place it on your own head. Then you turn to Josephine, who is kneeling before you in robes of white satin and gold embroidery, and you crown her empress. Your imperial mantle weighs 80 pounds. The ceremony lasts 3 hours. The cathedral is packed with dignitaries, soldiers, and a very specific message to the world. I am not a king by inheritance. I am an emperor by my own hand. The night before, there was a hasty, secret religious marriage, arranged by your uncle Cardinal Fesch, because, technically your civil wedding in 1796, the one with the absent registrar, the pug attack, and the mutual age fraud, didn't count in the eyes of the church. The Pope couldn't crown a couple who weren't properly married, so you married Josephine again, quietly, privately. There's something almost tender about that. Jacques-Louis David will paint the coronation scene. It will take him 3 years. In the painting, Josephine kneels before you, head bowed, as you hold the crown above her. It is one of the most famous images in European art, and it captures, perhaps accidentally, the exact power dynamic of your relationship. You above, her below, the crown in your hands alone. December 2nd, 1805. Exactly 1 year after your coronation. And you are about to fight the battle that defines military genius. Austerlitz. The Battle of the Three Emperors. You against Tsar Alexander I of Russia and Holy Roman Emperor Francis II of Austria. They have more men. They have the high ground. They have the confidence of two monarchs who believe they're about to crush an upstart. You let them believe it. This is the key to everything. You deliberately appear weak. You abandon the commanding Pratzen Heights, the dominant terrain on the battlefield, and pull your forces back. You send a diplomat to the Allied camp with a proposal that radiates desperation. You even order a tactical retreat that looks panicked. The Allies take the bait. They move their main force off the heights to attack your right flank, convinced you're collapsing. And the moment they do, the moment they've committed to the attack and stretched themselves thin on the plateau, you send Marshal Soult's corps slamming into the weakened center. Up the heights they go, through the morning mist, and they shatter the Allied line like glass. The sun burns through the fog at the critical moment, illuminating the battlefield. The sun of Austerlitz becomes one of your most powerful symbols. For the rest of your life, you'll reference this moment when you need to remember what you're capable of. The Allied army is destroyed. Thousands drown in the frozen ponds as the ice breaks under the weight of fleeing troops. Tsar Alexander weeps. Emperor Francis surrenders. The Holy Roman Empire, which has existed in one form or another for over 1,000 years, is dissolved. You are the master of Europe. Over the next 2 years, more victories follow. Jena Auerstedt crushes Prussia. Friedland shatters Russia again. At the Treaty of Tilsit in 1807, you and Tsar Alexander meet on a raft in the middle of the Niemen River and divide Europe between you like children dividing a chocolate bar. At your peak, you control from Spain to the borders of Russia, from the North Sea to southern Italy. The Corsican boy with the funny accent rules an empire larger than anything since Rome. But here's the problem with being at the top. There's only one direction left to go, and there's one thing you still don't have. One absence that your enemies know about, your family whispers about, and your wife lies awake worrying about every night. You have no heir. And that absence is a ticking bomb at the heart of everything you've built. The Italian campaign deserves more attention, because what you accomplish here borders on absurd. See, the army of Italy has been sitting in these positions for years, basically serving as a holding force while France's real armies operate in Germany. Nobody in the Directory expects you to do anything spectacular. They expect you to keep the Austrians busy. That's it. You do not keep the Austrians busy. You obliterate them. Your strategy is deceptively simple and devastatingly effective. Divide and conquer. The Sardinian and Austrian armies are operating in loose coordination, spread across the passes and valleys of the Maritime Alps. If you can drive a wedge between them, you can defeat each one separately. It's a textbook maneuver, except no one has actually managed to pull it off in this terrain against these forces with an army this demoralized. At Montenotte, April 12, 1796, you attack the gap between the two armies. Your soldiers haven't been paid in months. Their shoes are falling apart. Some of them are literally barefoot. And they follow you into the Austrian positions like wolves who've finally spotted dinner. Because that's essentially what this is. You promised them rich Italian plains. They can see the plains from the mountains. Motivation is a beautiful thing. Within 2 weeks, the Sardinian army sues for peace. Within a month, you've chased the Austrians across half of northern Italy. Within 3 months, you've redrawn the map of the Italian peninsula. At Arcole, in November 1796, you charge onto a bridge holding a French flag, trying to inspire your troops to follow you across. You're knocked off the bridge and fall into a swamp. Your staff pull you out. You're covered in mud and possibly also in a certain kind of glory that comes from being the general who charges the bridge himself, even when it doesn't work. And through all of this, every single night, the letters. I do not pass a day without loving you. I do not pass a night without clasping you in my arms. I cannot drink a cup of tea without cursing the glory and ambition that keeps me from the soul of my life. Your secretaries copy these letters for the military dispatches. They have to edit them, because the commanding general of the Army of Italy keeps putting love poetry in the middle of official correspondence. There's a complaint from the directory about this, an actual formal complaint. Meanwhile, Josephine is redecorating her rented house with money she doesn't have. She's attending parties. She's wearing the extraordinary new fashions of the Directory era. Sheer muslin gowns in the Greek style, often dampened to cling to the body. She is dazzling. She is popular. She is very, very busy. And Hippolyte Charles is making her laugh. He does impressions. He tells jokes. He buys her little presents. He's uncomplicated in all the ways you are not. He doesn't write her letters about how her image haunts his waking hours. He's just there, present, light. You are conquering Italy. He is making your wife giggle. The universe, you're beginning to suspect, has a truly vicious sense of humor. But here's where the domestic catastrophe arrives. When Junot tells you about Josephine, when the full scope of it hits you, you don't just feel betrayed. You feel foolish. All those letters, all that passion poured onto paper while half of Paris was laughing behind your back. You are the man who wrote Sweet and Incomparable Josephine, while she was in bed with a lieutenant who tells puns. That's what truly cuts. Not just the infidelity, but the humiliation. The private made public. The vulnerability exposed. And when the British intercept your letter to Joseph and publish it, when your raw, bleeding heartbreak appears in a London newspaper for the entertainment of your enemies, something fundamental shifts in your understanding of the world. Vulnerability is not just painful. Vulnerability is a weapon your enemies will use against you. You will never make that mistake again. December 15th, 1809. The Tuileries Palace. You're back. You are standing in the throne room. It is massive. Gilded mouldings, crystal chandeliers, tapestries depicting victories that are already becoming history. The room is designed to intimidate. Tonight it just feels cold. 25 people are present. Your family, hers, officials, the air is thick with something between ceremony and execution, because that's what this is. A formal severing, a state-sanctioned heartbreak. Josephine enters wearing a white dress, not an imperial gown, not the gold-embroidered robes of the empress. A white dress, simple, almost bridal. And you understand the message immediately. She's dressed as the woman you married, not the empress you created. She is 46 years old. Her teeth are still bad. Her grace is still extraordinary. She is the most composed person in the room, until she isn't. You read your statement first. Your voice is steady, Or at least you force it to be steady because you have learned that public displays of emotion are ammunition for your enemies. Far from ever finding cause for complaint, I can, to the contrary, only congratulate myself on the devotion and tenderness of my most beloved wife. She has adorned 15 years of my life. The memory will always remain engraved on my heart. Then it is her turn. She takes the paper. She begins to read. Her voice catches almost immediately. She manages a few sentences about the honor of your love, about the sacrifice she makes willingly for the good of France. And then she stops. She can't continue. She is shaking. The paper falls from her hands. Your secretary Regnault de Saint-Jean d'Angely finishes reading her statement for her. Now, here's the detail that no one ever forgets who hears it. After the ceremony, after the papers are signed and the marriage is formally dissolved, you carry her yourself, physically, up the stairs to her chambers, because she cannot walk. The most powerful man in Europe carries his ex-wife up the stairs because her legs have given out from grief. Your valet Constant will later write that he heard you both crying behind the closed door. You, Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of France, who hasn't publicly wept since Egypt, are crying in a room with the woman you just divorced. In the morning, she leaves the Tuileries. You give her Malmaison, the estate she loves more than any palace. You give her a generous income. You give her the title of Empress. You give her everything except the one thing she wanted, which was to stay. It is a womb that I am marrying, you tell your advisers about your new bride. Marie-Louise of Austria. She is 18 years old. She is the grandniece of Marie Antoinette, which is either poetic or horrifying, depending on how you feel about the guillotine. She's been raised to consider you a monster. Her father, Emperor Francis, is using her as a bargaining chip. You do what you always do when confronted with something human and complicated. You throw logistics at it. You plan the wedding with military precision. You send instructions about her wardrobe, her etiquette training, her travel route. You don't send love letters. You send organizational memos. The wedding is spectacular. The marriage is functional. Marie-Louise is obedient, young, and somewhat bewildered by the intensity of your schedule. She does her duty. She is pleasant company. She will never understand you the way Josephine did, and you will never ask her to. On March 20th, 1811, she gives you a son, Napoleon Francis, Joseph Charles, the King of Rome. You finally have your heir. The cannon fires a 101-gun salute across Paris. The dynasty is secured. You hold the baby, and something almost cracks in you. Not the political satisfaction of an heir. Something older, simpler. The feeling of a father holding his son. You are 41 years old. You've been at war for most of your adult life. And you're holding a baby who doesn't know or care that you're the emperor of anything. But here's what you don't know yet. You will see this boy for the last time in 3 years. He will grow up in Austria, speaking German, called Franz by his Habsburg relatives. He will die at 21, having never once used the name Napoleon. Your dynasty. The whole reason for the divorce, the whole reason for breaking Josephine's heart, lasts exactly 1 generation. The sacrifice was real. The payoff was not. And somewhere in Malmaison, Josephine is tending her roses. She has over 250 varieties. Her gardens are among the finest in Europe. She receives visitors, maintains her correspondence, and occasionally When the letters from you arrive, warm and affectionate in a way they never quite were during the marriage, she allows herself to believe that something survived. June 24th, 1812. You stand on the banks of the Niemen River, the border between the Duchy of Warsaw and the Russian Empire. Behind you stretches the largest army the world has ever seen. 612,000 men, 20 nationalities: French, Polish, German, Italian, Dutch, Spanish, Croatian, Swiss. A rolling city of soldiers, horses, cannon, supply wagons, and camp followers that extends for miles along the roads of Eastern Europe. It takes 6 days for the entire army to cross the river. Now, why are you here? The official reason is that Tsar Alexander has abandoned the continental system, your trade embargo against Britain. The real reason is more complicated. Alexander is the only other major power in Europe not under your thumb. He was your ally at Tilsit, but allies who operate independently are, in your experience, just enemies who haven't declared themselves yet. So, you're going to do what you always do. March in, win a decisive battle, force a peace treaty, go home. That's the plan. The problem is the Russians don't cooperate. They retreat, and they retreat, and they keep retreating. They burn crops behind them. They destroy bridges. They empty towns. You advance into a landscape that's being systematically stripped of anything useful. Your soldiers begin to starve within the first 2 weeks. Not from a lack of supply wagons, you have thousands, but because the distances are so vast that the wagons can't keep up. Horses die by the thousands. Dysentery and typhus tear through the ranks. You haven't fought a single major battle, and you're already losing hundreds of men a day. They call this a country, one of your marshals mutters. The steppe stretches in every direction, flat, empty, enormous. France is a garden compared to this. This is a continent disguised as a country. At Smolensk, August 16th to 18th, you finally catch the Russian army. Sort of. They fight, but it's a rearguard action. Fierce enough to cost you 10,000 casualties, but the bulk of the Russian forces slip away again. And they burn Smolensk as they leave. Your soldiers enter a city that's mostly on fire. You should stop here. Your marshals tell you to stop here. Establish winter quarters. Consolidate your supply lines. Wait until spring. This is the rational decision. This is what a calculating commander would do. You don't stop, because stopping isn't something you do. Borodino, September 7th, 1812. This is the bloodiest single day of the Napoleonic Wars. Possibly the bloodiest single day in European military history up to this point. Roughly 250,000 men and 1,000 pieces of artillery concentrated on a front of about 3 miles. The Russian commander, Kutuzov, has finally decided to stand and fight. He's built earthwork redoubts, the Raevsky Redoubt, the Fletchers, the Shevardino Redoubt. The terrain is rolling, partly wooded, bisected by streams. It's not ideal ground for either side. Your attack plan is unusually straightforward for you. No brilliant flanking maneuver, no subtle trap. You throw your army at the Russian positions in a series of massive frontal assaults. The fighting is indescribable, frankly. The Raevsky Redoubt changes hands multiple times. Davout is wounded. Ney's troops assault the Fleches 3 times. Your artillery pounds the Russian lines at ranges that turn fields into abattoirs. By evening, the Russian army withdraws. You have won. Technically, you hold the field. The Russians have lost approximately 44,000 men. You've lost roughly 35,000. But Kutuzov's army is battered, not destroyed. They retreat in order. There is no rout, no mass surrender, no Austerlitz-style collapse. You have won the bloodiest battle of your career, and it hasn't actually solved anything. A week later, you enter Moscow. It's empty. The city has been evacuated. Governor Rostopchin has released the prisoners, removed the fire equipment, and this is the part that will haunt your sleep. Ordered fires set throughout the city. Moscow burns for 3 days. 3/4 of the city is destroyed. You set up headquarters in the Kremlin and wait. Surely Alexander will negotiate now. You've taken his ancient capital. You've beaten his army. The rational move is to negotiate. You write Alexander a letter. It is returned unopened. You wait. 5 weeks in a burning, empty, increasingly cold city. The nights are getting longer. The temperature is dropping. Your army is spread across Moscow, looting what's left, drinking what they find, and slowly, beginning to understand that this is not going to end the way the Italian campaign ended. On October 19th, you order the retreat. You are about to discover what Russia does to invaders. The word retreat doesn't capture what happens next. There isn't really a word in any language that captures what happens next. You leave Moscow with roughly 95,000 combat troops and perhaps 40,000 stragglers, camp followers and wounded. You also leave with wagons of looted treasure, carriages, and all the debris of an army that doesn't yet understand what it's walking into. The plan is to retreat south, through territory that hasn't been stripped bare. But Kutuzov blocks the southern route at Maloyaroslavets on October 24th. After a sharp, ugly fight, you're forced back to the same road you came in on. The Smolensk Road, through the same devastated countryside you already passed through, where there's no food, no shelter, nothing. Now, the cold. Here's what most people get wrong about the retreat from Moscow. The cold isn't what kills most of your soldiers. Disease and starvation kill far more than the temperature. Typhus, dysentery, and sheer exhaustion are ripping through the ranks before the first major snowfall. Your men are eating horseflesh, raw, because there's no firewood. They're eating leather from their equipment. There are reports, credible ones, documented in multiple accounts, of cannibalism among the stragglers. But the cold does come, and when it comes, it is merciless. Temperatures drop to -20, -30 degrees. Your soldiers' muskets are too frozen to fire. Their fingers are too numb to load them, even if they could. Men fall asleep beside campfires and freeze to death before morning. The road becomes a trail of frozen corpses, abandoned wagons, and dead horses. Cossack cavalry harasses the column constantly. They pick off stragglers. They attack baggage trains. They appear out of the snow, strike and vanish. Your rearguard, commanded by Marshal Ney, who will earn the title Bravest of the Brave on this march, fights a continuous running battle that lasts for weeks. Vyazma, November 3rd. Your combat effective force has shrunk to roughly 55,000. You've lost 40,000 men in 2 weeks. Not from a battle, from walking. Smolensk, November 9th. You reach the supply depot that was supposed to save the army. It's been partially looted by troops who arrived ahead of you. What's left isn't enough. Your soldiers fight each other for scraps, and then the Berezina. November 26th to 29th. The Berezina River. This is where the retreat becomes a catastrophe of almost mythological proportions. The river should be frozen solid this time of year. It isn't. An unseasonal warm spell has partially thawed it. The bridges are destroyed, and Kutuzov's army is closing from behind, while another Russian force under Admiral Chichagov is approaching from the south. You are trapped, your engineers, and this is where you owe your survival to men whose names history barely remembers. Build 2 makeshift bridges under fire, standing waist-deep in icy water. Many of these engineers will die from hypothermia within hours. They build the bridges anyway. The crossing takes 2 days. It is chaos. Soldiers, civilians, horses, wagons all compete for a narrow bridge. People are pushed into the water. The bridges break and have to be repaired while under artillery fire. On the morning of November 29th, the order comes to burn the bridges, while thousands of stragglers are still on the wrong side. 10,000 people are left behind. The Russians will capture them. Many won't survive. Of the 612,000 who crossed the Niemen River in June, approximately 27,000 combat-effective troops will make it back. Total casualties: dead, wounded, captured, deserted, died of disease, somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000. 500,000 human beings. Now, here is something you should know about yourself at this moment. On December 5th, near Smorgoni, you make a decision that your critics will never forgive you for, and your defenders will never stop explaining away. You leave the army. You hand command to Murat and board a sled for Paris. Your justification is sound. Politically, you need to get back to France before your enemies use the disaster to overthrow you. You need to raise new armies. You need to control the narrative. Every hour you spend with this dying remnant is an hour your enemies are using against you. All of this is true. And it doesn't change the fact that you leave your men to die in the snow while you race home in a warm carriage. This is the price of ambition. Not just the price you pay, the price that 500,000 men paid because your strategic genius told you that Russia could be conquered in a single summer campaign. It couldn't. And somewhere, deep in the part of you that still calculates odds with mathematical precision, you knew it couldn't. But you went anyway, because you are Napoleon, and Napoleon doesn't stop. The Grande Armée, the greatest military force Europe has ever assembled, is gone. And with it, the myth of your invincibility. Every king, every general, every diplomat in Europe is watching, and they are doing the math. There's a detail about the divorce that deserves attention because it reveals something fundamental about who you are. In the weeks before the ceremony, you visit Josephine at Malmaison repeatedly. You cry during these visits, not quietly, not stoically. You weep openly, in front of servants, in front of her ladies-in-waiting. The Emperor of France sits in a garden chair and sobs while the woman he's divorcing tries to comfort him. She's the one being discarded, and she's comforting you. Think about that for a moment. The emotional geography of this relationship has always been skewed, but this might be its most revealing moment. You need her to tell you it's all right. You need her to absolve you, because you cannot bear the thought that you are the villain in this particular story. You're not wrong. You are the villain. but you're also the victim of a logic you built yourself. The logic that says dynasty matters more than devotion, that empire requires an heir, that history judges rulers by what they leave behind. You built the cage, and now you're trapped inside it with the woman you trapped there first. The night before the divorce, you have dinner together. Just the two of you. Constant describes the scene. You eat in silence. Neither of you can manage conversation. At one point you reach across the table and take her hand. She doesn't pull away. This is the last dinner of your marriage, and it looks exactly like the first one. Two people who don't quite know how to say what they feel, sitting across from each other in candlelight. After the divorce, your correspondence with Josephine actually becomes warmer. Freed from the pressures of the imperial marriage, freed from the question of heirs and dynasty, you write to her with genuine tenderness. I want you to be happy, you tell her. Not resigned, happy. You send her gifts. You worry about her finances. She's a spectacular spender, always has been. You visit Malmaison when protocol allows. This is the paradox no biographer has ever fully untangled. You loved her more after you left her than you did while you were with her. Or perhaps you loved her the same amount, but the leaving removed the anger and control and possessiveness that had been smothering the love underneath. She gardens. That's what she does now. Malmaison becomes one of the most extraordinary botanical collections in Europe. She imports plants from around the world, roses especially, over 250 varieties. She commissions Pierre-Joseph Redoute, the greatest botanical illustrator of the age, to paint her roses. The resulting book, Les Roses, will become one of the most valuable illustrated works in history. The woman who was Empress of France finds her peace in flowers. There's a kind of wisdom in that, the wisdom of knowing what actually sustains you once everything else has been stripped away. Now, Marie-Louise, you try. You genuinely try. You are attentive, even gentle, in a way you never quite managed with Josephine. You write to Marie-Louise's father about what kind of riding horse she should have. You select her wardrobe. You personally inspect her apartments in the Tuileries. You are, in every measurable way, a more considerate husband the second time around. But consideration is not the same as passion. And Marie-Louise knows it. She's not stupid. She knows she's a political instrument. She knows that the man who crowned Josephine wept while doing it, and the man who married Marie-Louise checked the dinner menu. These are not equivalent emotional events. Still, she performs her role admirably. She is pleasant. She is dutiful. She bears you a son. And when you hold that baby, when you hold the King of Rome for the first time, something in your face changes. Your valet writes about this moment. He says you looked, for the first and only time in his memory, like an ordinary man experiencing ordinary joy. That's the cruelty of it. The most powerful man in Europe gets approximately 3 years of ordinary fatherhood before the world tears it away from him. Now, about Russia. Let's talk about what the invasion reveals about who you've become. The Napoleon who won at Austerlitz would not have invaded Russia. That Napoleon calculated odds with ruthless precision. He identified enemy weaknesses, created traps, and exploited them with perfect timing. He was a surgeon with an army. The Napoleon who invades Russia in 1812 is different. He's still brilliant. He's still capable of astonishing military insight. But something has shifted in his relationship with reality. He has begun to believe his own mythology. "I have 612,000 men," you tell your advisors when they raise concerns about the campaign's logistics. "I have never lost a campaign with forces like these." This is technically true. It is also catastrophically irrelevant, because Russia is not Italy, or Austria, or Prussia. Russia is a country where the map lies to you. The distances look manageable on paper. On the ground, they swallow armies whole. Your own intelligence reports tell you the supply situation will be critical. You commission an elaborate supply train, 26 transport battalions, thousands of wagons, vast stores of provisions. It's the most sophisticated logistical operation in military history to date. And it's not nearly enough, because the roads are bad and the distances are vast and horses eat through their feed before the wagons can reach the forward depots. Marshal Davout tells you the army needs to consolidate and advance more slowly. Davout is your best corps commander. He is rarely wrong about logistics. You don't listen. You believe the campaign will last 3 weeks, maybe a month. You'll find the Russian army, defeat it in a decisive battle, and force Alexander to negotiate. This has always been the pattern. This is how wars work. This is how your wars work. But Barclay de Tolly, the Russian commander, doesn't cooperate. He retreats, and retreats, and retreats. He gives up city after city, province after province, drawing you deeper into Russia while your supply lines stretch thinner and your army melts away from disease and hunger. This is the strategy of a country that knows its own vastness is a weapon. Russia doesn't need to beat you on the battlefield. Russia just needs to be Russia. And the deeper you march, the more you resemble the thing you never thought you'd become. A man chasing a victory that doesn't exist. The decisive battle is always one more march away, one more river crossing, one more burning city. At Borodino, when you finally get your battle, you don't display the tactical brilliance that won Austerlitz. Your marshals urge flanking maneuvers. Davout proposes a massive turning movement around the Russian left. You reject all of it. "I will not have my army dispersed across this countryside," you say. And you order frontal assaults, direct, bloody, effective in a grinding, attritive way, but not clever. Not the work of the man who tricked 3 emperors at Austerlitz. Something in you has calcified. The flexibility that once defined your genius has hardened into stubbornness. The confidence that once seemed supernatural now seems merely rigid. You still see the battlefield more clearly than any commander alive. But you've stopped listening to the battlefield when it tells you something you don't want to hear. Moscow, when you finally reach it, is supposed to be the prize, the culmination. You enter through the gate of the Tsar and ride to the Kremlin. The streets are empty. The silence is wrong. You can feel it. Then the fires start. Governor Rostopchin has ordered incendiaries throughout the city. French soldiers report seeing Russian men and women deliberately setting fires. The wind carries the flames from building to building. Within 24 hours, Moscow is an inferno. You are forced to evacuate the Kremlin itself as the flames approach. You stand outside the city and watch it burn. "These are Scythians," you mutter. "Scythians," referring to the ancient nomads who destroyed their own lands rather than let invaders have them. And in that moment, standing before a burning Moscow, surrounded by an army that has marched 1,000 miles to conquer a city that would rather burn than be conquered, you might begin to understand that you have met something your genius cannot overcome. Not a general, not an army, a country that would rather destroy itself than submit to you. 5 weeks you wait. 5 weeks in the smoking ruins. 5 weeks writing letters to Alexander that go unanswered. 5 weeks while the temperature drops and the horses eat the last of the grain and your soldiers loot what the fires didn't take. On October 19th, you order the retreat, and what follows is not a military withdrawal, it is a catastrophe. 1813. The wolves are circling. You raise new armies, astonishingly fast, pulling boys and old men and walking wounded back into uniform. Your organizational genius hasn't deserted you. You can still conjure an army from the wreckage of one. But these are not the veterans of Austerlitz. These are conscripts. Children, some of them. France is running out of soldiers because you've been using them up for 15 years. At the Battle of Leipzig, October the 16th to 19th, 1813, the Battle of the Nations. You face the combined armies of Russia, Prussia, Austria, and Sweden. 300,000 Allied soldiers against your 190,000. It is the largest battle in history before the 20th century. You fight brilliantly. Of course you do. You're still Napoleon. But brilliance isn't enough when the numbers are this lopsided. On the third day, your Saxon allies switch sides, mid-battle. They turn their guns on French troops who are fighting beside them minutes earlier. The bridge over the Elster River is destroyed prematurely by a panicked corporal, trapping 20,000 French soldiers on the wrong side. Leipzig is a catastrophe. You lose 70,000 men, killed, wounded, captured, defected. You retreat across Germany fighting rearguard actions, losing men to typhus and exhaustion with every step. By early 1814, Allied armies are entering France itself. For the first time in 20 years, foreign soldiers are marching on French soil. And you fight like you haven't fought in years. The campaign of France, January to March 1814, is arguably your finest military performance since Italy. With an army of barely 70,000, facing over 400,000 Allied troops, converging on Paris from multiple directions, you win battles at Champaubert, Montmirail, Château-Thierry, Vauchamp. Your speed of movement is extraordinary, marching your men through February mud, appearing where the enemy least expects, striking before they can concentrate. Your marshals think you've lost your mind. Your enemies think you're bluffing. You're doing neither. You're fighting with the desperate clarity of a man who knows this is probably the end. But it is the end. On March 31st, 1814, Allied forces enter Paris. Tsar Alexander rides down the Champs-Élysées. Your marshals confront you at Fontainebleau. Ney, who has fought beside you since Italy, tells you bluntly, the army will not march on Paris. The game is over. The army will obey me, you shout. Ney's response is quiet and devastating. The army will obey its generals. On April 6, 1814, you abdicate, unconditionally. You are given the tiny Mediterranean island of Elba, a 12-mile-long rock with 12,000 inhabitants. You get to keep the title of Emperor of Elba. The joke writes itself. You try to poison yourself that night, the vial you've carried since the Russian campaign. The poison, however, has degraded over time. You vomit violently but survive. Your valet constant and your physician are alarmed. You wave them away. Fate will not even let me die, you mutter. On April 20th, you bid farewell to the old guard at Fontainebleau. These are the men who have been with you since the beginning. Through Italy, Egypt, Austerlitz, Moscow. You embrace the eagle standard. You kiss it. Your soldiers are weeping. You are weeping. Continue to serve France, you tell them. I would embrace you all, but let me embrace your general. You embrace General Petit, and then you walk to the carriage. Elba. A cottage compared to the Tuileries, garden compared to an empire. You reorganize the island's infrastructure, because that's what you do. You improve the roads. You reform the garbage collection. You plant mulberry trees. You are the most overqualified municipal administrator in human history. And then, May 29th, 1814. Josephine is dead. She caught pneumonia at Malmaison after walking in her gardens with Tsar Alexander, who, in an irony that must have entertained the universe, had visited her as a gesture of respect for the woman Napoleon loved. She was 50 years old. Her last words, according to those present, Bonaparte, Elba, the King of Rome, your name, your prison, your son, the three things on her mind at the end. When the news reaches you on Elba, you lock yourself in your room for 2 days. No one is admitted. No food, no messages, no government of Elba to administer. When you emerge, something in your face has changed. Your valet notices. Your aides notice. The grief isn't dramatic. It's geological. Something has shifted underneath that can never shift back. She was the most alluring woman I ever knew, you will say later. The most graceful. She was the kindest human being I have ever known. And then, more quietly, I truly loved my Josephine, but I did not respect her. That second statement, that's the tragedy condensed into 8 words. You loved her and diminished her. You adored her and controlled her. You mourned her and had caused the grief she lived with. These things exist simultaneously. Love and cruelty, devotion and domination. The human heart is not a logical instrument, and yours least of all. February 26th, 1815. You leave Elba with roughly 1,000 men and 4 cannons. This is either the greatest act of courage in military history or the most spectacular exercise in denial. Possibly both. You are sailing toward France, where the restored Bourbon monarchy has put a price on your head, where the Allied powers have promised to destroy you if you ever set foot on French soil again, where, by any rational calculation, you should be marching toward your own destruction. You don't care. You are Napoleon, and Napoleon doesn't stay on a 12-mile island administering garbage collection. You land at Golfe Juan on March 1st. You march north. Near Grenoble, you encounter the 1st Regiment sent to stop you, the 5th Line Infantry. Their muskets are leveled. Their officers have orders to shoot you on sight. You walk toward them, alone. You open your coat. Soldiers of the 5th, you say, if any of you wishes to shoot his emperor, here I am. Silence. Then, Vive l'Empereur! The regiment switches sides. And then the next one, and the next. Marshal Ney, who promised King Louis XVIII that he would bring you back to Paris in an iron cage, meets you on the road and falls into your arms. Sire, he says, there is no army. By March 20th, you are back in the Tuileries. Louis XVIII has fled. The empire is restored. The Allies are mobilizing the largest military force ever assembled to destroy you, but for one brief, impossible moment, you are back. Your first visit isn't to the throne room, it's to Malmaison. You walk through Josephine's gardens, you sit in her rooms, you touch the furniture she touched. You look at the roses she planted, still blooming, tended by gardeners who don't know what else to do. And for a few minutes, you are not the emperor returned. You are just a man visiting the home of a woman who isn't there anymore. Then you go to war, because that is also who you are. Waterloo, June 18th, 1815. The ground is soaked from rain the night before. This matters because wet ground slows your artillery, and artillery is your primary weapon. You delay the attack to let the ground dry. Those hours will cost you everything. Wellington's army holds a ridge near the village of Waterloo. He's positioned behind the crest, which means your artillery is firing blind. The fighting is savage. Hougoumont Farm, La Haye Sainte, the repeated cavalry charges that crash against the British squares. You send in the Imperial Guard. They have never retreated. In 20 years of warfare, the Imperial Guard has never broken. They are the best soldiers in Europe, and they march up that ridge into musket fire so thick that the air itself seems to be shredding. Wellington stands up in his stirrups and waves his hat. The whole British line surges forward. And for the first time in their existence, the Imperial Guard falls back. La Garde recule. The Guard retreats. The cry spreads across the French army like a disease. If the Guard is retreating, all is lost. And then the Prussians arrive, Blücher's army, marching through the mud all day, smashes into your right flank. The French army collapses. Not a retreat, a rout. Men throw down their weapons and run. Only the old guard forms squares and refuses to surrender. When called upon to lay down their arms, General Cambronne reportedly responds with a single word that is too French and too profane for this narrative, but which can be summarized as no. You escape the field. You ride back to Paris. You abdicate again. Your second abdication in 14 months. And then you do the thing that tells us exactly who you are underneath everything. You go to Malmaison. Again. Not the Tuileries, not a military headquarters, not a government building. You go to the home of the dead woman who was the love of your life. You walk in her gardens. You sit in her rooms. The roses are blooming. The British are coming. The Prussians are coming. Every army in Europe is converging on France. And you are at Malmaison, sitting among Josephine's roses, looking at a world that has finally, definitively moved beyond you. October 1815. They put you on a ship, the HMS Northumberland. 70 days at sea, heading for an island you've never heard of, in the middle of the South Atlantic, 2,000 miles from the nearest continent. St. Helena. It is volcanic. It is remote. It is, in the assessment of the British government, sufficiently far from everything that even Napoleon Bonaparte cannot cause trouble from it. They are mostly right about this. Your home is Longwood House. It's damp. It's cramped. It's draughty. The walls are infested with rats. The garden, such as it is, produces vegetables that taste of the volcanic soil. Your jailer is Sir Hudson Lowe, a man whose entire personality can be summarized as inflexible, and who views you less as a prisoner and more as an ongoing administrative inconvenience. You hate him. He is petty. He censors your mail. He restricts your movements. He insists on seeing you in person every day, which you find humiliating. You refer to him as that Corsican-hating wretch. He refers to you as General Bonaparte, deliberately denying you the imperial title. Your entire relationship is a 6-year exercise in mutual contempt. But here's the thing about St. Helena that nobody expected, including you. Stripped of power, stripped of armies, stripped of the machinery of empire, you become, for the first time in decades, something like a human being again. You garden. You plant flowers and vegetables and trees on this wind-swept rock. You read voraciously. English novels, which you find amusing, and scientific journals, which you find fascinating. You play chess with your companions. You dictate your memoirs to Las Casas, then to Montauban, then to Gourgaud, shaping and reshaping your legacy with the same strategic brilliance you once applied to battlefields. This is your final campaign, not against armies, but against history itself. You know that what you dictate on this island will define how the world remembers you, so you craft the narrative carefully. You were the son of the revolution. You were the liberator of peoples. You would have given Europe peace if only the British and the Russians had let you. Some of this is true. Some of it is generous interpretation. All of it is calculated. Even in exile, even dying, you are still the greatest propagandist in European history. Your health declines, slowly at first. Stomach pains, vomiting, weight loss, then faster. You know what this is. Your father died of it. Stomach cancer. The same disease that took Carlo Bonaparte at 38 is taking you at 51. By early 1821, you are confined to bed most days. The doctors disagree about treatment. Hudson Lowe disagrees about everything. The rats still infest Longwood. The wind still howls across the island. And you, the man who conquered Europe, who crowned himself emperor, who stood before the pyramids and referenced 40 centuries, you are dying in a damp bedroom on a rock in the middle of the ocean. On May 5th, 1821, at approximately 5:49 in the evening, your heart stops. Your last words are disputed. Montauban, who was present, claims you said, France, the army, head of the army, Josephine. Marchand, your faithful valet, who was also present, heard something slightly different. The accounts don't perfectly align. They rarely do when the dying speak in fragments. But the name that appears in most accounts, the name that multiple witnesses place on your lips as the final coherent thing you ever say, is hers. Josephine, not France, not glory, not the army, not your son, not empire. The name of a woman who died 7 years before you, the woman who betrayed you, the woman you divorced, the woman whose garden you visited in your darkest hours, the woman who survived the guillotine and didn't survive pneumonia, the woman who called you Puss in Boots and whose pug bit you on your wedding night. That name, her name, the last thing the most powerful man in the world ever said. And so your story ends. Not on a battlefield, not in a throne room, not with the crash of cannon or the roar of crowds. It ends with a name, whispered in a damp house on a remote island, heard by only a few people in a room that smells of camphor and grief. You were born on the margins of everything. You conquered the center. And at the very end, when the empire was gone and the armies were scattered and the crown was just a memory, you reached for the one thing that power could never give you and ambition could never replace. You were the boy with the funny accent, the artillery officer who ate one meal a day, the general who charged bridges, the statesman who rewrote the laws of a continent, the emperor who crowned himself because no one else had the right to do it. And you were the man who wrote love letters by candlelight in Italian villas while conquering a country. The man who couldn't get his wife to write back. The man who locked his bedroom door and then opened it again because he couldn't bear the sound of her crying. The man who visited her garden when the world fell apart. Maybe that's the thing about lives like yours. They look like they're about power. They look like they're about conquest and crowns and the redrawing of maps. But underneath all of it, underneath the battles and the code and the coronation and the exile, there's just a person, trying to be loved, trying to matter, trying not to be the lonely boy at Brienne who eats lunch by himself. And maybe no one will remember the exact sound of your voice, or the way you once stayed up all night writing letters to a woman who didn't write back. But somewhere, in a courtroom built on laws you drafted, in a school system you designed, in the rose gardens at Malmaison, where the flowers still bloom, you're still there, not as a ghost, but as the echo of what one human life, lived at full intensity, can leave behind. The story is over. But yours is just beginning. Sleep well, nightlings. Since you made it this far, I'm glad you enjoyed the episode. If you would like to continue listening to episodes with similar themes, I linked them in the description below. You will also find a playlist of our most popular videos. Sleep now, nightlings, and wake up, as always, a little stronger and a little wiser. The story is done, but yours continues.